Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhaj.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhaj of Authentic Living with Roxanne. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Today I have a colleague, Kendal and I think met about 2 years ago, Kendal?
About 2 years ago, yeah.
We work with the same coach who's a phenomenal coach. Her name is Jane Atkinson. And she had one of her retreats, and that's where for the first time I met Kendal, who is Canadian, and I'm Canadian, and we were in Cape Coral, which was a nice place to be. So Kendal is, I'm going to say, an amazing young man. And I actually had the privilege of meeting his sister, who I understand now speaks, which I did not know that, Kendal. So just recently in London at the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. So Kendal speaks on something that's really dear to my heart and my background in mental well-being and beating the odds. And he speaks about resilience. So this is an amazing young man who has done fantastic things, started a business quite a long time ago, initially with retail, and then has gone on to become, just recently won an award for the 40 under 40, which are leaders and entrepreneurs in Canada. And I'm going to have Kendal tell us a little bit more about anything that I've missed there, Kendal. So you tell me what I've missed that people should know about you.
Well, primarily I speak now. I do a lot of keynotes across the country, primarily in Canada, from the west to the east coast, on just what you said, resilience in leadership in the workplace. And it's been keeping me busier for the last 3 years. I really went full time into it almost 3 years ago. I went from starting my own apparel company, selling hoodies, t-shirts out of my own branded products, having my own stores, and then being a hamster in this wheel for so long, just trying to manage all these stores. I had over 100 staff over the term of that run with all of our stores, and learning a lot of things about different people and customers and how to deal with them and how to keep people coming back again and again. And I transfer that into my keynotes and all the research that I've done up until that point. And we've been able to help a lot of people, organizations across this country to date. I published my own book, Driven to Succeed, on basically my own resilience story of what we've overcome as children, with myself. My sister's in the book as well with her story. And we're just here to try and to make the people's lives, their business lives, their relationships better. And if I can do my part in sharing what I know in my story, my journey, and help ignite something within someone else, I think we've done our job today.
So I had the privilege of hearing you tell your story in Florida, and I would love for you to share a bit of that because I think it's a phenomenal story about how people can make a difference in sometimes your story. I remember being quite touched by it. So share a little bit of that so that people understand kind of the context of where you come from.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm from a First Nation called Sweetgrass First Nation in Saskatchewan. And I was raised there, single parented by my mom ever since I was about 5 years old when my mother and my father split up. And from right after they split up, we were living in women's shelters for several weeks, and basically homeless shelters for single mothers with their children. And we were bounced around these shelters for several weeks, and eventually made our way back to my mother's home reserve, which was Sweetgrass, or my grandma. We call her Kukum in our language. So we lived with our Kukum, and she took us into her home, and we lived there for several months. And then we finally got a little house on the reserve, a 2-bedroom house. 5 of us. I'm the oldest in my family. Then there's Kendra, Farah, and Marisha, my mom. And so we all lived in that house up until I graduated high school. During that time, we had a lot of struggles that I thought were just normal because I was a kid just growing up in this lifestyle that I didn't realize where we were going through so much. Because I was a kid, my mom did a really good job of taking on that burden, I guess we'll say, and not letting it affect the kids. And by her doing that, she was able to sacrifice a lot for us so we can, have a chance to succeed today. And I like to say that I'm a product of her sacrifice for a lot of us. And so is Kendra. She's able, we're able to speak now because of it. I was able to graduate university, to start businesses, the top 40, all the stuff was because of, we had someone back home that we can rely on. So in grade 5, I was going to a little farming community, getting bused there every day. And I had a best friend. His name was Johan. And Johan was a kid from South Africa. And we just happened to be going to the same school at the same time. His dad was a doctor at the local clinic. And we happened to be both like soccer. So one day he asked me why I wasn't playing soccer after school. And right when I was going to jump on my bus to go back home, I had to explain to Johan that bus that I just pulled up was my only ride to and from my reserve, my community. And we were living on welfare. We were living on social assistance. And I used to see my mother budget that welfare check right down to the dollar.
Wow.
So I was watching her on a table, and she would be budgeting all this stuff. And she was able to develop her own shorthand writing, so I couldn't really understand half of it. So my mom is a very smart person, but she'll never admit it. And so I used to watch her do all this. And then I told Johan, I opened up to my best friend. I said, you know what, Johan, aside from that, we're also collecting cans and bottles. We're exchanging them to the recycling plant for change. I have a bike I like to ride. I only get that for 2 weeks of the month because the other 2 weeks he goes into the pawn shop. I told him about, some of the houses we have mold in our basement in our house. There's a lot of our houses that weren't built to standard. They're just kind of built just enough to live in. Every week there's a water advisory, so we can't drink our water every week. And I just did some filming 2 days ago in our reserve. I went back with the film crew.
Wow.
With video narrative. I don't know if you know video narrative.
Yes,
Chris West.
Yes.
So I hired them to come and do a video for me, and he brought one of his guys, Brian from Portland. He flew into Saskatoon. We drove 2 hours away to my reserve, and we went there. And what is the first thing that we see on the community center door? Do not drink the water. That's the boil water advisory. So the stuff that we are dealing with is. Was normal to me, I guess. So I told my buddy Johan, and him and his family, they took it upon themselves to kind of help me out. They paid for my soccer fee. They drove me to games and practices. We became best friends. For 2 years, I was at his house almost every single weekend. His dad became my role model. He used to compliment me all the time, uplift me when I couldn't do that myself. And my own dad, we had a very, I didn't see him a lot. So I never had that. I wasn't able to bond with him like that, where he was able to tell me things where I could really, how can I say that? Where I can really truly appreciate the words that were coming out of his mouth, and I can absorb them. So if he never really said, I'm proud of you, son. I'm happy that you do. He wasn't like that, but that's all he knew about parenting. So I get that as I became an adult. He had his own upbringing that he had to overcome a lot of things as a kid. So when, for the 2 years, I was going to Johan's house all the time, and they actually had to move away to Saskatoon, so another 2 hours away. And before they left, they gave us a 1986 Ford Crown Victoria that was sitting in their yard, and it was a burgundy red car that they gave to my mother so we can continue to play sports, and the rest of the story. So much good came from that family. But the thing I want people to hear, they didn't give that vehicle to me. They gave it to my mother because they saw something in my mother. They saw the sacrifice, because they're able to get to know my mother and what she was doing for us. Leaders recognize other hardworking people who are trying to get ahead. When you get to a certain point in your life, in your business, you can pick out people in your organization, your family members even, and who's really trying their best to make things work, and they're giving everything that they can. And sometimes all they need is a little push, a little nudge. So they saw that in my mom, and that's what they did for us. And it obviously, it paid off. Look at me, like I'm able to be here today with you, right? So it's crazy. It's just crazy. Yeah.
It's amazing. I wouldn't say crazy, Kendal, because I'm going to say, and I'm going to ask you this question with my background, resilience is something that you you emulate, right? As a young child, you must have learned certain things from your mom. And obviously, you talked about a little bit about from Johan's family to, and just from Johan, just that
Yeah.
connection. Tell me what you think the key elements are to resilience, because you're a role model, a young man that I feel privileged to be around you, to see you do this out there, and you're speaking to other people out there that have had similar backgrounds, and they think I'm not good enough, I can't do it. Nobody cares about me. All those things.
Yeah. The first step is you have to do a mental shift in your mindset. You have to go from stop playing the victim to taking control of wherever it is that you can presently take control in your life. And for myself, I played that victim card for a long time, where I thought that, I was not meant for success. I thought that I was going to end up like a lot of my people in my community who kind of just hung around and didn't really do a whole lot beyond that. And so when you grow up in circumstances where they're not as favorable as most people that you look up to, or that you wish you were living like, that starts to play with your mind and condition you to not really think big. So when I started to get into sports, especially, sports kind of allowed me to see the bigger picture, because I would get a chance to go and be around different families. So for example, like if my friends were on the same team as me, and I was always like the only First Nations kid on everything in my life. So that was one thing I had to overcome, was getting used to being uncomfortable in a situation where I'm the minority all the time. And that really bothered me for so long. So when I got into business, I really wanted to try to create more business owners and try to help people. And we were able to do that, which is really cool. But back then, I was able to have a lot of non-Indigenous family members around me. Sometimes I go to their house, and I'd be like, wow, this is a beautiful house. So I was expanded by association and seeing what they did, how they interacted, what they talked about, their conversations. And it expanded my mind to kind of think bigger slowly over time. So by the time I was able to get into university, my mind was already, okay, maybe I can become a teacher. Maybe I can become a phys ed teacher. And then throughout university, then it manifested into, maybe I can start a business. Maybe I can start this business. And then when I got the business, maybe I can actually create a really successful business. And then from there, I went to, wait, I actually like speaking. I'm going to tell my story through this business. I mean, hey, actually, I like speaking, right? Man, I actually want a nice home for my family, and I started to really develop the vision up here of what I wanted in my life. And it's still growing, right? Now it's like, okay, where do I want to see myself as a speaker? So the clearer you can get on where you want to go in your life, the clearer you can see it, you work backwards on what do I need to do to get there. And it sounds, it honestly it can be as simple as you want it to be. A lot of people make things complicated because they're so used to life being complicated for them. And if you want things to be simple, it can, but you have to convince yourself up here first to make it simple. So I write my goals down every year. So every year I have 3 goals for that I want to achieve for the year. So this year I said I wanted to, just a second, I wanted to have 40 paid keynote engagements. I was a few shy of that, so we almost hit that goal. What was the next one? Hold on a second. Where was that? I wanted to make the high income earners club at CAPS. So that was like one of them. Because actually in CAPS, I was there, that was my 3rd year in a row. And the first year I was just a new speaker. So I was able to make that group, which is pretty cool. And the next one was, I wanted to expand my coaching practice. So I started doing that as well this year. So those were the 3 goals I had for this past 2019, and we've been able to pretty much hit them. So
let's talk about mindset, because you're like, I'm thinking that there's a lot of kids that can relate to your experience, either from First Nations. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I don't even know if you know that. I grew up privileged, and so I grew up elsewhere where I saw everybody in authority being a different color from me, from my prime minister to my president to my dentist, all that stuff. So when I came to North America as a foreign student, and when I saw how people looked at difference, I went, wow, why can't they see that you're capable of things that I had seen, right? Because I grew up with colonialism, right? I did in the islands, but I grew up being told you can do anything you want to do.
Right.
So when I came here, I was like, well, why do people not think they can go to university? That's kind of why I'm here. Like, so for anybody listening that, you know, is indigenous or maybe foreign or not foreign, just growing up with, you know, underprivileged, and that chatter in your head is, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, I can't do. What did you actually do to quiet that voice and shift it to say, this is possible for me, Kendal?
There was a few things. You know, one of them was I got tired of the pain of it. The pain became too much of not. I've always felt like there were so many people that gave me an opportunity to possibly have a chance, from coaches to Johan's parents, my own mom, my grandma. So I felt like I was going to let them down, and I didn't want to let them down. And so that kind of played into, okay, I need to think bigger. I need to try, actually, maybe I should go to school. You know, in grade 10, I never even thought of university. So my mind was so closed, right? I never thought of beyond that. And as like, using your gift is so important. Everyone has a gift. And for me, it was sports at that time. And I used sports as a gateway to get me into to play multiple sports. And I excelled in those sports. I played college volleyball. And that sport allowed me to build confidence in myself, to be able to be more vocal. You know, I was always the shyest kid, believe it or not, Roxanne. I was the shyest kid in the room all the time. I was like
that I find hard to believe, because you do not come across as shy.
I had to do a whole shift in everything. Like, I'm a new person, but the same person at the same time, with the same roots, just a different person, so I can succeed out here. Right. So everything had to shift. And so the pain was a point for me where I wanted to just do what I could, live up to what I think I can achieve with my life. And then when I finally started to get momentum, it was, okay, there's no one that's ever done this from my background. Like I have no role models. I have to be that role model. I have no choice. So it's always been tougher for me. Like, that's just the way of my life's been. It's been, and I just been, you know, I embrace it now. Like, okay, if it's going to be tough, I'm going to give it everything I can, so the next person can take it further and further, and hopefully we can I can help more people from my background.
You can create that path, because you think, I'm first, and I want, I mean, obviously you have two little girls, right?
Boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. So you have those little ones like sponges watching daddy and what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
And watching their aunt now creating that space. So for anybody listening, you started your business before you started speaking.
Right.
What was the kind of the thinking behind the Netmaker gear enterprise?
Yeah. So the first company was called Neechie Gear. So Neechie is a slang form of friend in our language. So it's like friend gear. And I started that as a full-time student in education. So I didn't become a teacher. And the reason I started it, because I got intrigued by business plan competitions. And that's when they were really starting to come out in the prairies. And I was like, I should try this out and see what happens. But I had no idea how to write a business plan, right? So so here's another again about mindset. Most people, when they get into the business, they think, I need a business degree. I can't start a business without business training. You know, I'm thinking about going back to school. I get this all the time. I'm thinking about going back to school to get a business degree or diploma so I can start a business. One of the biggest myths out there about business, or even becoming a speaker, you know, I need to be polished or whatever. No, you get polished by doing it all the time. Like, you grow. I was a horrible speaker when I first started. I had to grow. And when we were in 2010, I started my first company, and it failed. I ran into some trademark issues. I couldn't trademark the name, and I had to close it down. 2011 comes around, I redo my business plan. I take people out for coffee. I didn't know how to write a business plan, so I sit there with a notepad and notes, how to write this business plan. I bought some software. I put the business plan on there. I presented it to all these judges. They picked me as a finalist, and when I finally got on the stage, I had to learn how to do a business pitch. I was terrified, didn't know what I was doing. So I had to do like research on Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, and I would sit there in classrooms late at night and I'd practice in an empty classroom till I finally had the confidence to step out on stage. And when I finally got there was one thing that separated us from everyone else. We had a unique purpose-driven story. And the purpose-driven story of how Johan impacted me and how we wanted to impact thousands of people out there through a clothing brand, it ignited something in all those judges. And we were the only one to do that. So we didn't win all those competitions, but we won money in mostly all of them. So we were able to take that money back at about 16,000 the first year we won, and I was able to buy clothing. I was able to buy apparel, designs, create a website, and I started to sell out of my one-bedroom apartment in Saskatoon. And from the apartment, we went to a little office. I took a little office outside my apartment because my son was born now, and we needed more space in our apartment. And I was like, we were really scrambling. And then from the office, we took a little kiosk in the mall. So we had a little cart there, and then the cart, we took it to a full store in the mall. And then we had another store in a different city. Then we started to do wholesale to other retailers. And we opened up an online store, and we were selling Canada-wide and to North America and so on. And then I got into speaking. And
wow.
So speaking was a result of me starting Neechie Gear. And that was, again, another journey by itself. And it led us here.
So you know how to build businesses.
Yes.
You've taught yourself how to build. So you built Neechie Gear, and now you've built your speaking business.
Right.
So I would say that you didn't need an MBA to be able to do that.
No, you got to be driven. Yeah, that's the word back there, right? You have to be. First off, you have to make a decision. The decision is the hardest part for some people. The reason why most people don't live up to their expectation or their potential is because they haven't given 100% to that decision that they should make. They go half foot in, half foot out. And if you're going to do that, then you're only going to get maximum 50% of your potential into that idea. So let's pretend you wanted to start a project, and maybe you wanted to start your own business or a nonprofit, whatever it might be. And you do it as a little side gig for a while. You put a little bit of effort here over the years, but it doesn't really go to where you expect. You get discouraged, right? Well, you're discouraged because you haven't given all your energy. You're too busy doing project A, B, C, D, and E and F. When I got into all my businesses, there was one thing that made it successful. I had to commit everything I had in my energy to every business I started, from Neechie Gear to every store, to the speaking business, to writing this book, to creating this coaching company, and every other project in between. I'm 100% laser focused into it. All my energy's into it. So if it fails, and hopefully it doesn't, then at least I know I've given it everything I had. It's kind of like in sports. All you can do is give it everything you have. If you lose, it's not the same feeling as maybe you lost, but you know you could have did better. That's the worst feeling. So in business and in life, it's very much the same thing. Give it everything you have. That's the best. That's all we can do at the end of the day. Give it everything that you can.
So do you have a ritual that you follow to keep laser focused? Because I'm curious about that, because I'm going to say, and we know that, right? We have 60,000 thoughts in a day.
Yeah.
And a lot of them it can sidetrack you, right? Oh, I need to go see that friend, or, oh, I'm not going to make that prospect call, or I'm not going to try to get on that big stage because they're going to say no. We always have detractors. How do you stay laser focused to stay driven like you're How do you do it?
So I write a lot of things out from, like, personally, everyone's different. For me, I like to write things out, and on my wall back there, you can't see it. It's kind of my own personal, I have everything that I'm focusing on in my business. I have my daily mantra, right? So that reminds me of what I'm trying to achieve. I have all of my products that I'm trying to sell. So if an email comes through, I know what I'm going to pitch to that person. From my speaking to my coaching to my online series to my online course and all my other products, I have my 4-point coaching question that converts really well. So I've created systems, I guess, for myself that allow me to stay focused. And every day that, especially when you're on the road and you're speaking, you probably know this, Roxanne, when you're on the road, you're very limited to what you can accomplish unless you have an assistant, which most of us have a really hard time finding a really good one. You can really only commit to one major thing every day. And you focus on that one thing, and that might branch out to maybe 2 or 3 other things below that. But the one thing, you have to stay laser focused and at least accomplish that thing. That's how you keep your momentum going every day. Because if you miss that one thing, your momentum starts to slip. So focus on the one key thing. And there's a book that I read. It's called The One Thing. You read that book. Yeah, it's an amazing book.
Okay.
And it's all about staying laser focused by focusing on one thing a day. And it trains your mind that you're achieving all the time and that you're getting there. You're getting there. Because if you have 3-5 things on your to-do list, it's really easy to miss a couple of them. It's really easy to get discouraged from that too. Subconsciously, you might get discouraged not even knowing that you're getting discouraged. But if you're achieving that one major thing every day, you have it written down. Okay, today I'm going to make my podcast with Kendal, right? And that's the main thing today. We're going to get going. Tomorrow we're going to do, I'm going to make, I have to send that email to that client or this proposal. That's the main thing I'm going to head to tomorrow. You're achieving every day, and that momentum starts to build and manifest over time into bigger things. So that's the key.
Pretty amazing, right? Because, we talk so much and most of us are split, right? We have all these goals, and you took one thing and you said, it sounds like this year you decided that keynoting was what you were going to do. And that's all you did. And you accomplished, like you said, you were 1 or 2 speaking events off, which is amazing because you started speaking how long ago?
Full-time about 3 years ago, roughly.
Okay.
And the reality is I didn't realize this. I've always been in the speaking business in some way. Because when I first got into it, I was already kind of speaking at local schools, but I was just trying to sell t-shirts. I wasn't getting paid ever to speak when I first started. I was just trying to, I'd love to come to your high school and speak to your youth, but do you mind if I bring, a couple bins of my clothing, and if any of the teachers want to buy some clothing for your kids, or maybe the kids have $20, they can buy a shirt. Can we do that? And sometimes I'd make $1,000, $2,000, per event. And I was happy with that. I was like, man, I can't believe we're crushing it, right? This is amazing. So, that's how it all evolved. Was in 2012, I started speaking like that. And I would just 2015, I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. In 2016, I registered my business, and then, we're 3 years later.
And the rest is history. And now you're talking some of the, obviously I follow you. So I see you, some of the huge stages that you've been on, which, I'm right behind you there, and I'm going to just listen to everything, all the words of wisdom that you've given today and apply them. So, Kendal, for any young person out there that has a dream, what are some words of wisdom that you could give them, and something that they can apply? Let's say we're ending the year. I'm sure we're all sitting down and writing our goals. What words of wisdom would you give to these young people out there?
The words of wisdom I would give to you is if you want to really achieve whatever goal that you feel that you want to achieve. For example, it has to be an obsession. It has to be an obsessive feeling that you have towards that, whatever path that you're going to go. You have to actually wake up and feel like you want to do it. I would not be speaking if I didn't feel like I was meant to do it. Okay. I would not have started Neechie Gear if I felt like I wasn't meant to do it. And I was, everything I started, I get a rush. So it was like, I was always gravitated towards those projects. You need to develop it has to be the same feeling for you. And every single successful leader I've had a chance to research and work with, it's very similar. They start things based on an obsessive desire to achieve that goal. And if your obsession isn't there, move on to something else, because there's no point trying to replicate someone else's successes because you get inspired, which happens to a lot of people, but their emotional connection to that is not there as the other person. That's why they're not succeeding. So it's an obsession. Once you're able to feel that, what you want to do is you want to try to find people who have achieved that already or done something similar, and you research them. You buy their books. You listen to your YouTube videos. You listen to their podcast. When I first got into it, I was a sponge for all this knowledge, and I was able to learn how to do everything from start to finish in the t-shirt business because of that same hunger for knowledge. So I used to do my own screen printing in my own apartment. That one bedroom apartment, I had a little factory going on. And I realized very quickly after 2 weeks of doing that, what a waste of time, but at least I know what to do now.
Right.
So I was able to understand the whole process, from the screens, the ink, the squeegee, the heating the ink, how it doesn't crumble in the washer and dry, everything, right? How to design my own stuff. I played around on Photoshop and Illustrator, and I was able to create our own logo, and so all this stuff, even in speaking, same thing. I hired coaches. I bought their books. I went to their seminars. We both know Jane, and we're both getting coaching, right? Yes. We're always learning. You have to have that hunger to learn, and you match it with an obsessive desire with the goal. I really believe that is one of the major things that will help get you to where you want to go in your life.
Well, you're very inspiring. I learned so much more again, even though we've been in the same arenas, because we're the students when we sit in those rooms, and we're surrounding by amazing people that are doing amazing things and getting their messages out there. And you're an inspiration to anyone that's thinking about, you can't do it. Anything's possible. It really, really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds cliche, but if Kendal is any representation of that it shows you that it's possible, to be honored with this big award. And he is definitely one of the younger speakers in the professional association. There's not a lot of younger people. Most people are pivoting into speaking, generally like myself, mid-career, stepping
Mm-hmm.
into it. So it's a blessing to see him out there. So what am I taking away from Kendal? I'm taking away that project forward, think about where you want to be and create that obsession. And what happens is things start to fall into place. The more you just surround yourself. So whether it's, I want to be the best soccer player or I want to be the best business person, go out there, find people. We are in the information age. You can find anybody. And Kendal could probably echo this, is when people are successful, if you pick up the phone and you ask them to talk to them, I'm amazed how many people I've actually spoken to. They said, sure, Roxanne, I'll give you, half an hour of my time.
Right.
Reach out, get the wisdom, and that's inspiring. And then you take the steps necessary. So again, resilience is something that you can achieve in any given day, and you never know where the messages will come from. So follow that path. And as you know, with myself, I'm a mental health and wellness specialist. I talk about authenticity and leadership and mental resilience. So if you're needing me, you can connect with me at roxannedurhodge.com. And again, Kendal, thanks again for your time. It's always a pleasure, and maybe we can connect with your sister at some point, because I would love to also.
Absolutely, she has an amazing story. She's definitely stay in touch with her.
I will. I'll get her contact. Okay, everyone. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannedurhodge.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.